Okay, Commissioners, are we ready for prime time? Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Clackamas County Commissioners, issues and updates for June 14th, 2022. It's Flag Day. Are we all waving our flags today? County Administrator Gary Schmidt, what's up first?
First chair you're going to meet is the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District. If you would please adjourn as that board.
I now adjourn as the Board of Clackamas County Commissioners, and we will convene as the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District.
The item for today under North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District is the fiscal year 2022-2023 North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District Budget Adoption Update. As you know, we pulled this item from your budget meeting last week. We want to explain why, and then with your permission, bring it back. We have Elizabeth Comfort, the Finance Director, and Elizabeth Gomez, who's the Finance Manager for the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District. Please go ahead.
Good morning. I'm Elizabeth Gomez.
Go ahead and pull the microphone close so we can hear you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming today.
So when the North Clackamas Parks and Rec District budget was prepared and given to the Budget Committee, I'm sorry, I'm very nervous.
You know what? Guess what? You don't have to be nervous, because if you are, we'll have Dan Johnson come up and take over for
Okay,
you.
good.
All right? So
Yeah, you're fine.
I think you know what the questions were. Just present the information as you know it. That's all you have to do.
When we presented the budget to the Budget Committee, we had the ARPA funds being transferred to capital projects and then being put in reserve. After the budget was approved, subsequently, we learned that we could not do that with the ARPA funds, that they had to be used, they couldn't be put in reserve. They had to be used for something. So it was decided that we would use the ARPA funds to pay for the payroll within our recreation, sports, and aquatic park budgets. But we kept the transfers the same out of the general fund into capital projects. So the transfers would be from the general fund, not from ARPA. When I did that, I wanted to show that no ARPA funds were going to capital projects. And in order to do that, I changed the line items within the capital repair and replacement budget. The total didn't change, but the two line items did, so that I could show directly that the reserve in the capital projects was just the beginning fund balance of that account. No ARPA funds are being moved to it. I thought that was a cleaner and more easy to understand action. So that's how the budget was changed. The total budget wasn't changed. Those two line items were changed within the budget.
Sounds like it was in the wrong column for us lay people up here. But Elizabeth, would you like to conclude with this?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So Elizabeth Gomez spoke correctly, and it's really the transparency that we want to present. There was an asterisk on our budget PowerPoints that we presented during the Budget Committee meetings that did state in the reserve was going to be the ARPA funds, and this wasn't caught until after. And so we worked with Mike and Elizabeth to identify that ARPA funds will not be put into a reserve, but rather used to offset their payroll costs appropriately. So really,
And how much is the amount?
it was 2.7 million?
For ARPA, it was about 3.2 million.
Oh, 3.2 million.
3.2 million. Will that cover payroll costs for a year
It will, for those three programs.
for the three programs? Interesting. Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, well, you may have already said it, maybe I didn't really pick it up, but so what other eligible use of those ARPA funds besides payroll can we expend those on?
Primarily, their activity is personnel or capital projects, so those would be the two.
Right. I'm not thinking of anything else. I mean, supplies and things like that, but it was to be used to pay for, lost revenue, which when last, we had to, put a lot of employees on leave. So that was our thinking, is that we would use it for the payroll.
Yeah, I say that because this is probably probably once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, right? So if there is, and maybe that's a deeper conversation for our meeting coming up here pretty soon with NCPRD, what can we, with once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, these dollars, being eligible, what can we do with those dollars to maximize their impact? But that's for another day.
You can lose, so for ARPA lost revenue, you can use it for any purpose you want. It does not have to be payroll. It can be capital expenses. It can be project expenses. It can be materials and supplies. Entirely up to how the department chooses to spend it. Does not have to be payroll only.
Correct. And the other thing I will add is that they are continuing the transfer with the same amount to capital projects. So it frees up those dollars still to be used for future needs. So the dollars are still available. They're just not the ARPA dollars that are going into
would-
reserve.
Be money that was normally spent on payroll.
Right.
And so that will become available. And maybe
That is correct.
in preparation, like Commissioner Savas has said, for our next NCPRD meeting, that we can have that number, a more definitive number for that. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Commissioner Fisher, you're up.
Yeah, I'm still confused about this. I know that the board approved all of the lost revenue, and I was the lone voting no on that, mainly because in my mind, during COVID, we laid people off in NCPRD. We did not incur those payroll costs, and yes, we did not have the revenue from the fees, like from the Aquatic Center or the different fees that we would gather. But it's still confusing to me as to how this all fits together, and it's a good use of ARPA dollars when we did lay off staff, so we didn't have the expenses, but yet we had lost revenue. So what is it really offsetting?
So the ARPA dollar calculations asked us to look at the revenue that was not received. So that, and I totally hear your comment, Commissioner. It's like, well, where's the offset for that, for the expenses? If there wasn't any, why are we collecting the lost revenue? However, that is how they've asked us to calculate the lost revenue, was strictly on what was our normal practice and receipts of revenue and what did we not collect. So that's what we've presented for the NCPRD.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is a question for this board, but the decision would be, I guess, now before we approve the budget, if we wanted to reallocate those dollars for a different use. It just doesn't make sense to me when we didn't have the expenses, why we would offset them.
Okay. Good. I think Commissioner Schmidt might want to answer your question.
I'm Administrator Schmidt, thank you. I don't want to be commissioner. I respect all of you for doing that.
Those terms kind of sound the same. Sometimes, no, go ahead.
He doesn't want us to be administrators, anything. So
That's what it is.
that's what it is.
Yes.
No comment. Respectfully, Commissioners, you've already made the policy decision, so this is not the discussion about the policy decision. You've already made it. So this is just, we're here just to tell you, to be fully transparent, there was a number transposed. That's why we pulled this as a budget item. We're bringing it back to you on June 30th. You can have this discussion if you wish on June 30th, but you've already made the policy decision, and every other department's using lost revenue except this one. So if you're going to do it for this one, you need to pull it back from everyone else, but you've already approved their budget. So this is simply bringing this back for the NCPRD budget on June 30th. We've told you the reason why.
And this is just a briefing on what's happening then, and so we take no action today, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any other questions from commissioners on this? Seeing none, thank you for coming today.
So on June 30th, this will be on your agenda for a final adoption. Thank you, Elizabeth and Elizabeth. Chair, would you now convene as the Water Environment Services Board?
We will now recess as the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District and convene as the Water Environment Services.
And I don't know who's here for West today. Is it you, Ron? Please come forward. All right, this is a request for consent agenda for Water Environment Services, approval of a personnel services contract with SLR International Corporation for environmental air quality engineering consulting, contract not to exceed $191,050 for 5 years. Funding is through West operating funds. No county general funds are involved. Ron Wayenga, sorry, Ron, is Assistant Director of Water Environment Services. Go ahead, Ron.
Thanks, Gary. Good morning, Commissioners. Ron Waringa with WES. Today we have a request for a contract for SLR Engineering to support our air quality permitting at our facilities. We have air quality permits at our Kellogg and Tri-City and our Intertie 2 pump stations. They're typically for things like diesel generators that we have on site. We also have permitting requirements for our new gas engine at Tri-City. And so we're water people. We have some staff who could do this work in-house, but we've typically relied on consultants to help us with the air quality permitting pieces. The contract will help us support the permits that we have. We help us apply for new permits if we need them, and also helps us with some state mandates on reporting inventories for some of the state's climate action goals, as well as some other emissions and potentially legislation. If it comes up, we have our consultant help us create a position on that. So this contract is a 5-year contract to support that work with a one renewal option with SLR, if you approve.
Any questions or comments for the presenter on this?
So is this anticipated to, I mean, I see it's a 5-year contract, but is this work going to be required from here on out in perpetuity?
Yes, Commissioner, we will certainly need some form of air quality permit from DEQ unless something changes with state law. The types of permits that we have might change, but this is an ongoing thing for us.
Because these are, I mean, it just seems that there's, from a, let's say, volume standpoint, that it's negligible compared to the greater scheme of emissions out there and other combustible
Yeah.
apparatus. You know, it just seems that it's so small, but yet that's a pretty big, I mean, $50,000 a year roughly here on is a lot of money.
Yeah, it certainly is, and it's fairly specialized work that we need to do. And over time, you know, we have engineering staff who are certainly dedicated to other projects, and we might build that capacity in-house. For the most part, you know, the types of facilities that we operate qualify as industrial facilities and has to do this reporting regardless of the quantity of our emissions, as well as our generators, which are used for emergency operations. But nonetheless, we still have to report.
All right, thank you.
Any further questions or comments for this item? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you very much.
This will be on your consent agenda for this Thursday. Thank you, Ron. Next, Chair, would you convene as the Housing Authority Board?
We will now recess as a Water Environment Services and convene as a Housing Authority of Clackamas County.
Thank you. And online is Housing Commissioner Ann Leenstra. Good morning, Ann. She's there? All right. I'm sorry? She's there. Okay, great.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ann. Thank you for joining us.
First up is a follow-up to an item you heard about a few weeks ago, and this is a request for a public hearing for the Move to Work program. We have Tony Carter, Interim Director of the Housing Authority, and Adam Brown, Deputy Director of Health, Housing, Human Services. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Tony Carter, the Interim Director for the Housing Authority. On May 31st, Rod Cook came here to the board at Issues and brought up the issue of us applying for moving to work status. The overall goal of gaining move to work status is to make families we already serve have more opportunities to improve their credit scores, build savings and escrow balances, and work towards graduation and homeownership. This strategy is in alignment with our overall development strategy. And when we plan to dispose of our scattered sites, our hope is to strengthen the opportunity for our tenants to be the people who are buying those units. In order to apply, it's getting our foot in the door with HUD to be a move to work agency. So the application project is pretty stringent and has deadlines that we have to meet. So in order to meet those deadlines, we have to have a public hearing on July 13th, which is a Wednesday. That's not our normal meeting time, so that is why we're here today.
Why does it have to be a Wednesday?
It's due to the timelines. We have to have a 30-day public comment period, and at the end of the 30 days is July 13th. And then we have to have within 15 days, per the application, the actual approval after the public hearing. And it has to go on those deadline dates.
Can't be one day later, July 14th?
Cannot be one day later.
Sorry, Chair, I totally missed this. The board doesn't have public hearings outside Thursdays, so how can we make this work?
Well, we have land use hearings on Wednesdays.
It's up to you, Chair Smith, if you want to
Well,
convene as the
yeah,
Housing Authority Board for this
That's what
one
I was
item.
thinking. We do have Wednesdays set aside for hearings, but, we're willing to do that providing the schedule is available. For the future, you need to, it would be most helpful if you could go through the procedure of Gary Schmidt and then Emily to notify me. to do this, so we're not caught off guard on this. And anybody out there who needs a public hearing needs to go through the administrative process so we can align our calendars. Our calendars for the summer is almost all set. I think we have 1 day left. And that doesn't account for emergency situations that may arise. So any staff people out there, please bring your requests to Gary and Emily, and then they will notify me, and then I will notify the board. That's the best procedure, because it's a timing and calendar issue, if you understand that.
I do, and I apologize. I'm kind of new at this, so my apologies.
Well, that's okay, we're all figuring this out.
They actually, staff did everything right. I missed it, Chair. I saw their memo, they submitted it in the right process. I didn't see the date, and I would have advised you ahead of this if I'd paid attention.
Well, for some reason, it just didn't rise to the level that it should have, and whatever, we're going to fix this. Tony, do we have July 13th available? That's a Wednesday, correct?
Madam Chair, at present, there are 2 land use items scheduled on that day.
Are they hearings?
They are both policy sessions.
Okay, our land use situations have been pretty heavy, but if this public hearing can be rather short now, do we need a follow-up public hearing after this one, or is one public hearing enough?
We will need a follow-up approval hearing on the 28th.
Okay, we're going to try to make this work, even if we have to meet at 9:30 instead of 10. Let's not set anything in stone, go back and work and see if we can get this on that date.
Wonderful, thank you.
All right.
So we have your permission to work it out, Commissioners? All right.
Absolutely. Go forth.
We'll make it work. All right, thank you. You're still meeting as the Housing Authority. There are 2 requests for consent agenda. First, approval of the Housing Authority of Clackamas County Board Order to write off uncollectible debt for the fourth quarter of fiscal year 2021-2022. Fiscal impact is $21,652.43 in total collection losses. No county general funds are involved.
Thank you, Gary, and thank you, Chair, for creating a safe space for nervousness. Adam Brown here.
Well, Dan is still in the room, so.
Well, I know, that's why, that was the safe part, is
Yeah,
Dan's still
okay,
being
got
here.
it.
Thank you so much. So in limited circumstances, former Housing Authority tenants leave behind debt from things like uncollected rent, late charges, and unit repair costs. The Housing Authority attempts to collect that debt for 90 days, after which time it enters the amount into the Federal Enterprise Income Verification System and writes that debt off. This action allows the Housing Authority to appropriately account for those collection losses.
And we've heard these items before. Any comments or questions for the presenter on this? Seeing none.
All right, next item, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with Home Forward to provide resident services and supportive housing care management at Tukwila Springs. Agreement value is $2,590,585.28 over approximately 5 years, funded through Supportive Housing Services funds. No county general funds are involved.
Thank you. So with the grand opening of this important 48-unit project happening at the end of this month, intakes for housing are already underway. The approval of this agreement sets the Housing Authority up to deliver resident services and supportive housing case management to residents starting July 1st.
Any questions or comments for the presenter? Commissioner Scholl, and then Commissioner Fisher, go ahead.
This contract, $2.5 million over 5 years, was this a competitive bid, or are you working with Home Forward? Are they getting this contract because they've worked with you before? The reason I ask the question is that this is a large sum of money, $500,000 a year for this case management.
Yeah.
And could you help the board understand where that $500,000 per year roughly is going to be used and how it's going to be used?
Of course. And Erin's here to talk a little bit about the procurement
Please introduce yourself and state what position you have.
I'm Erin Fernald. I'm a management analyst for the Housing Authority, and I worked to negotiate this IGA. This was awarded through a competitive bid process in 2020.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, and is this the only residential service available to Tukwila Springs?
Yes.
This is it for them.
So in the competitive bid process, Home Forward was awarded resident services contracting for Tukwila
For
Springs.
treatment of what type of services?
I'm sorry?
What type of services are you going to offer?
So this contract will have both case management for 36 units, which is more one-on-one intensive support for that household. And then resident services is more community building activities. So they will bring in fresh food, they might bring in medical care for their medical facility that they have. They have a room for medical treatments. They have just different things to build the community.
Specifically, what I'm asking, I maybe was not more clear. Is this for drug addiction, alcoholism, mental health? Because those issues have been raised as one of the reasons why our homeless population is growing.
These are not specifically for direct treatment dollars.
But
These
it
are-
says in here resident services, and sometimes we get confused on a residential treatment facility, which we have, and resident services. So are you to say that these are people that could be looking at homelessness or are homeless in this, or are they coming out of a situation where they're not yet homeless?
So, Chair, if I may, the folks that will be residents of this facility are by definition, they meet the criteria, right? They're low-income individuals. We know that there are often high-needs populations that are served in a facility like this. And so part of the customary services that comes with resident services is directing people and being resource navigators. So Devin can speak a little bit more to that, but this isn't for those services directly, but of course, Home Forward has a lot of experience serving folks in settings like this, and it will appropriately navigate people to the services that they need.
Would you like to comment and please introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, I'm Devin Ellen. I'm the Housing Development Manager with the Housing Authority. I'd also like to say that we are targeting folks exiting homelessness for this project. So primarily, those are the folks that we're going to be serving. And things like the case manager can direct them to drug addiction services, prevention services. So that could be included in the scope. It's really dependent on the individual and what their needs are.
Thank you for the clarification. It's been a while since we revisited this issue with this whole Tukwila project, and it's probably been a year, but thank you. 3 commissioners make comments. Commissioners, I'm not sure who was first, Commissioner Fisher and then Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, thank you. I hope I didn't miss a tour to go see the facility now that it's completed. We did do a tour when it was, before the improvements were done. Will there be an opportunity for us to go see it?
Yeah, I believe you'll be speaking at the grand opening on the
good.
27th.
When is it?
On the 27th?
Oh, good. Excellent. I'm so glad that that's been arranged. So that is wonderful. And I'm so thrilled about these services for this development, because we all know that keeping people stably housed requires support. And it's my understanding, so correct me if I'm wrong, but that support through the navigation case management will be tailored to what that individual's needs are. So it could be a vast variety of services that they will connect to.
That's correct.
So thank you for that.
Thank you. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, I just want to, maybe this might help understand this type of services in a way, but my understanding was this facility was more for seniors. Is that correct?
It is age
Right.
50 and above.
So it's not the general population where people are struggling with houselessness or so forth. So the needs and the services will probably more cater to or for that age group, right? Typically?
It'll cater to the individual, but there are, a lot of seniors experiencing homelessness. So.
Right. But I think perhaps maybe the perception, or perhaps whether it's drug and alcohol, I think that age group is less likely, that's not exclusive, but it's less likely to be a concentration of people with
Right.
drug and alcohol. It's more senior type care, but not exclusively. I would just fathom that would be the case.
Potentially, I'm not certain.
Thank you, Commissioner Savas, for that clarification. Is that it?
Yep.
Commissioner Schrader.
Yeah, thank you. I had an opportunity to visit the other day, and I was there when it was really, before it was rehabilitated, and what a remarkable change it has been. It's a beautiful facility, it's open, it's light, it has artwork, it's got a medical room, it's got a room where people can kind of gather in front of a fireplace. I noticed you had big lights, and thank goodness you switched them to the smaller lights. I think that was, I thought somebody must have looked at a catalog with that one. My understanding, even though Commissioner Schull and I walked around it, we couldn't actually go into the rooms themselves. And I was told there's a kitchenette, a bathroom, sleeping area, and the kitchenette is more just a sink and a refrigerator. So folks will be able to have, hot plates in there, I think. Is that-
Yeah, every unit has a refrigerator and a microwave.
Okay,
And then
okay.
there's a community kitchen that folks will have access to. And we're looking into providing little induction cooktops
Yeah.
in the units.
That's what, and there is, we did see the kitchen, and again, I remember what that looked like, and it's beautiful now, and the artwork is just underway with that. And I'm really glad that the funds are coming in over a year and a half from the social services bond that Metro put forward. I'd like to ask you guys to please make sure that Here Together is aware of this, because as I get their newsletters, they're not mentioning us at all.
I just reached out to them this morning. I had that
Okay,
same
good.
thought last night, so.
Well, thank you for that, because I'm kind of reading it and I'm going, well, shoot, we've been doing all this work, and it would be nice to have them understand, because, they did put us through a little bit of grief here. With all of this.
100% agreed.
And we just told them to be patient. We were going to implement as things happen. So if we can just get any time that those social services dollars are really affecting what we're doing, if we can let them know so they understand that implementation of this was always our primary focus, and we were just trying to manage, cash flow at this point. So I'm really, really glad that that's moving ahead, and I'm glad you reached out. You read my mind. Okay, thank you.
Good points by.
Yep.
Good points by all the commissioners. Any other comments on this? Ann Leenstra, are you okay?
I'm fine with it.
Thank
I
you.
think it's,
Gary, I hear no objections to this moving forward.
Very good. So both of these requests will go on this Thursday's business meeting agenda for consent.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Next, Chair, would you please convene as the Board of County Commissioners?
I now recess as a Housing Authority of Clackamas County, and we will reconvene as the Board of County Commissioners.
All right, next is regular county consent agenda items. Is someone here from County Council? All right, will someone get County Council? We'll push their item to the next. Next, Health, Housing, Human Services. Who's here today for that? Denise, great. Item 1, approval of a personal services contract with Northwest Family Services for alcohol and drug pre-engagement and prevention activities. Contract not to exceed $210,001. Funding is through the Oregon Health Authority. No county general funds are involved. Denise Swanson is Deputy Director of Health, Housing, Human Services. Go ahead.
Good morning, Chair Smith, Commissioners. So this one is to help pay for 2 part-time drug and alcohol counselors in the middle and high schools, doing outreach, education, et cetera.
Well, I like this one. Any objections or questions? No objections to this moving forward.
Item 2, approval to apply for a grant for behavioral health housing investment funds. Grant value is $4,704,837.17. Funding is through the Oregon Health Authority. No county general funds are involved.
So this is Oregon Health Authority's behavioral health housing initiative, and so we get $4.7 million. And the goal is really to decrease the number of unhoused people that have behavioral health diagnosis. So be working with the Housing Authority, of course, in what our strategies are to be with those dollars.
Okay, I have a couple commissioners. Commissioner Fisher?
Question, and I don't know if you'll know the answer, so Mary Rumbach can answer this, because I've been bugging her for quite a long time, that the legislature allocated $300 million for this purpose of, seems like forever ago. Is this actually the money coming down to us of that allocation finally?
This is actually the money coming down, so we are now, this is
Okay.
for us to actually apply for our $4.7 million for our county. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
We've
this
waited
is
a long
very
time.
good, this is very good news.
Excellent.
Very much needed.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Scholl?
Yes, good morning.
Morning.
as I look at this, the term intake center comes to mind. I don't need a answer now, but what I'd like is to ask H3S to look at the need for an intake center in Clackamas County and look at what you're doing here with this, this money, and let's talk and see if we can't incorporate an intake center with this money.
Very
Okay?
good. Yep, I will bring that back, Commissioner.
I'd love to hear about that. Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Interesting. Commissioner Fisher, Schrader,
Oh, okay.
the wrong S.
We have different colored hair.
You do, yes.
There you go. Only kidding. Okay. So I wanted to ask you folks, because I've been visiting the hospital systems, and I've had a chance to visit Legacy, Kaiser, and Providence. I haven't been to Providence, Milwaukee yet. Each one of those systems with their behavioral health component are having difficulty finding places for people when they come in there. So oftentimes, what they have told me, it's consistent across all three systems, which was worrisome. So is this a piece that will help that, so they can move people who have behavioral health to a safe place? But it's different than just an intake center. It's actually, how is the housing different than?
So that certainly is a strategy that could be looked at, because it is for rehousing people with behavioral health issues. So multiple strategies can be engaged, and I know that we've had some questions about what we are doing with placing people who are homeless in hospitals, and working directly with our hospital system to do so.
Well, even with behavioral health, as I said, some of them can't go back to their home evidently, and they need a different facility. And that's also a problem. And as I said, Kaiser, I toured through there, I toured through the other ones, and it seems to be a rising issue. Not a problem, it's a challenge we're going to have to face. So this, I just want to be clear, this will help remedy some of that. And have you talked to the systems at all? You have any conversations with them yet about how that might work, or?
That will have to be something I come back to you with, because
Okay.
I want to talk to our division director to find out what we've been doing specifically.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. That
Sure.
would be great if you could come back.
Thank you.
Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, in response to Commissioner Fisher about the $300 million from the state, okay, I'm curious, is this 1 year only, these funds, or?
It's through December 31st of 2023.
Okay.
So they're like 18 months, and it is one-time fund, so definitely we'll be working in alignment with our other housing efforts.
Okay, so that you
Yeah.
answered two questions for me. So the point I'm trying to get at is, if I take that 4.7 million and I multiply it times 36 counties, of course, we're a third largest county, so I'm just,
Yep.
it still only comes to $169 million. So my question is, where does the balance of the $300 million are going? Because it's certainly not going for just this program.
Right, so the state has a funding formula. I'm not aware of exactly what it is, but this is our calculated amount based on their formula.
So this is all we get of the 300?
Yep.
It seems like an awful small
4.7.
portion for the third largest county in the state.
Yeah.
By population.
Yeah, I can find out from OHA what our formula is and get back to you on that, with that information.
Yep, I'd
Yep.
love to know, thank you.
Yep,
That's
sure.
a good question, too. Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, it might be good, I don't know if we can, Chair Smith, but to have a dedicated time to look at all these different pieces and pots, because I just met with Mary Rumbaugh, and I was drilling her on this, because Association of Oregon Counties, of which I am the vice chair of the committee that addresses this, has been very concerned about the slow rollout. But my understanding is it's $100 million. It's going to be 3 distributions of $100 million each. So maybe we just need to look into how this pot of money will be. And I'm not sure if this is all that Clackamas County is going to get out of the 3 distributions. That might be how it is. But if that's true, if you look at the need and developing the capacity within the system, it's much greater than $4.7 million. And our real issue at the local level is that the courts will say, this person needs to restore to aid and assist in whatever judicial process that they're in, and because there's not enough room in the Oregon State Hospital, we need capacity at the local level, and we don't have it. So the need is extremely great, and I expect that Association of Oregon Counties is going to put this on their agenda, which we will be discussing, I think it's not later today, but tomorrow in Hermiston.
Good, excellent, excellent. Gary, I'm going to request that at a strategy meeting, whether it be this week or next week, that Commissioner Schrader and I in our strategy meeting take a look at the commissioners' concerns that were raised today. Commissioner Scholl, Intake Center, Commissioner Savas, the distribution of the $300 million, and all these questions, and if we can somehow organize something and then have you or Mary or whomever, the folks, come back and present to us a more cohesive plan going forward, because, we've heard many things today. We have all these parts out here, and they're like, bubbles, you smack them and they go. It's very difficult for us to know who's on first base, and I think that is important, and the commissioners raised. So let's try to get this organized, and so we can move forward. But I see no objections to this moving forward, correct, commissioners?
Yeah, it's just that and I appreciate the 100,000 or 100 million a year of the three, so I understand the distribution, but what's also in the packet is that these can be used in a number of areas, including capital. So if our distribution is, just say, 4.7 times 3 over the 3 distributions, that could be a lot of money to build something that we need, getting back to Commissioner Scholl's point about an intake center.
Right.
Yeah.
I like that idea.
Okay.
I like that, yeah, so keep that in mind, too. Gary, any comments on this?
Yes, so all you're doing today, Commissioners, is approving a consent agenda item to apply for the grant. Clearly, there needs to be a bigger policy discussion on this, so H3S should not be spending a penny of that until they go back to the board on how to spend the money.
Very good.
Thank you.
Incorporating everything we've heard today, you've heard today. Thank you very much.
Great.
No objections?
Item 3, approval of an amendment to a non-federal subrecipient grant agreement with Clackamas Women's Services for system diversion, homelessness prevention, and rapid rehousing services, increasing the value of the grant award for fiscal year 21-22. Amendment value is $40,000. Grant value is increased to $560,000. Agreement is funded by the Oregon Housing and Community Services Department. No county general funds are involved.
So this one is just adding $40,000 to our grant to help with rapid rehousing of people experiencing domestic violence. So it could be deposit, rent assistance, et cetera.
Any questions or comments? No objections to this moving forward?
All right, all 3 items will go on this Thursday's consent agenda. Thank you. We'll go back to County Council now. Item 1, approval of a resolution adopting changed fees for Clackamas County for fiscal year 2022-2023. Fiscal impact is $215,970 in additional revenue to Clackamas County. Funding is through user fees. No county general funds are involved. Stephen Madcore is County Council.
Morning, Commissioners. Stephen Madcore, County Council. What we have before you is a fee schedule for 22-23. The board approves all fees and fines on an annual basis, and this is the proposal for this year. Some of them are increases. The board's been briefed on those previously by the departments directly. Some of them are decreases. So this would just ratify what you have tentatively approved already, and if approved, it'd be effective July 1st. Carry over to July 1st, to June 30th, 2023. You'll do, like I said, you do this every year. What it would be is a resolution that would be on the consent agenda for this week.
I'm going through the attachment here, Commissioners, and there's quite a bit of information there on services that are used potentially by people in Clackamas County. Paper printing increases, and this whole thing, I've already approved that. I see there's a resolution to be signed. Gary, what is our action on this today? Just goes forward?
Today is simply to put it on the consent agenda for this Thursday. I wonder if you'd like to do it as a discussion item. Therefore, if any commissioners wanted to vote no, you wouldn't have to separate it from the rest of the consent agenda.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
And that will be this Thursday?
This Thursday.
Okay, Commissioners, that would be fine. Thank you very much. Yes, Commissioner Fisher.
Well, maybe this will be better for the discussion item, but I might as well ask now because you're here. So I'm looking at this, and yeah, it's a lot. But if I'm understanding this document correctly, anything that's been changed is in red, and most of it appears to be getting rid of stuff. blocking it out, and then any additions are also in red. Is that right?
I don't have a color-coded version of it, but it is highlighted. If you look in the right
Okay.
column, it will
Oh,
say,
and the highlighted, okay, I wasn't even looking there, I was looking at the red parts.
Yeah,
That's in the right-hand column.
it'll be, if you look at the first page, it has the legislative authority, whether it's set by state law or whether it's set by
Yeah.
code, the current amount and the proposed amount. And it will tell you which ones are being increased and which ones are being either repealed or decreased. Some are being eliminated, and that's all identified in the right column as well. So the majority of these are really staying the same.
Yep, I totally understand it now. Thank you, Stephen.
Yep, sure.
Any further questions or comments by commissioners? Any objections to this moving forward to a business meeting? Seeing none.
All right, so it'll be a discussion item on this Thursday's business meeting. And again, commissioners, nothing here is new. You've already had policy sessions on all these items. This is just ratifying it. But it'll be a discussion item this Thursday.
Do you want departments here for that, Gary, you think, or just?
I'm going to suggest that commissioners read through this. They submit their questions ahead of time. I'm not wanting to have this big policy debate on something that we've already done. Commissioners, come prepared to vote yea or nay on this, and it'll just fall where it falls, okay? All right, thank you, Stephen.
Thank
So
you.
no directors present. That will just spur the conversation, so not necessary. Thank you. Next, Transportation and Development. Moving on. Item 1, approval of a public improvement contract with Eagle Elsner for the Boyer King Road area paving package. Contract value is $766,766. Funding is through the Community Road Fund. No county general funds are involved. Dan Johnson is the Director of Transportation and Development. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Essentially, before you today is one of our promised local road improvement packages, the promises we made to the community as a part of the Community Road Fund. Gary read all the details out there. I can tell you, the board, that essentially the project was advertised in accordance with ORS and LCRB rules on April 5th, 2022. Bids were publicly opened on April 28th, 2022. County received 5 bids. After review of the bids, Eagle Elsner Incorporated was determined to be the lowest responsive bidder. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
It's 0.9 miles of existing roads with asphalt.
Correct.
And is this 766,000 the total price for that?
Yes.
Okay. Now we know how much a mile costs.
Depends on the width of the road and a variety of things, but for local roads especially, yes.
Right, right, interesting.
And Chair,
Commissioner Scholl.
Yeah, but this particular project is not just a straight 1.9, it's a lot of different, about 9 different pieces of streets that they're doing, have to do setup on and that sort of thing.
Correct. We do paving packages for these smaller projects so that we reduce mobilization costs, things like that for the contractors that go out there.
Mr. Fisher.
And the community engagement as part of the Community Road Fund, was this part of the advisory committee as
Yes.
well?
Yep, got put to the recommendation. That is correct.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any objections to this moving forward? Seeing none?
Item 2, approval of a contract with Eagle Elsner for the McLaughlin Neighborhood Paving Project. Total value is $656,656. Both of these are exactly the same numbers, Dan. I mean, they're not the same. They're beautifully written. 766 and then 566.
Lots of
6. Notice that, Commissioners? Amazing.
Yes, I did.
All right, I'll start over. Approval of a contract with Eagle Elsner for the McLaughlin Neighborhood Paving Project. Total value is $656,656. Funding through the Community Road Fund. No county general funds are involved.
This is a similar paving project package as we just discussed. The projects were advertised in accordance with ORS and LCRB rules on March 29th, 2022. Bids were publicly opened on April 27th, 2022. The county received 6 bids. After review of the bids, Eagle Elsner Incorporated was determined to be the lowest responsive bidder. Be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Just to comment on the numbers, it's a percentage of the amount additional, by coincidence perhaps, but it is a percentage,
Okay, any objection? Oh, Commissioner yeah.
mathematical anomaly.
Dan, about 7 weeks ago, we got a report from ODOT that the Abernathy Seismic Improvement Project went from $375 million to $495 million because of steel and high-strength concrete. Now, when you're paving these roads, you're using gravel and petroleum products to make that tarmac. Are you seeing increases in the price of materials for these road projects?
That was a very similar question that we got during our Budget Committee presentation from one of the budget members. We have not had to delay a project yet, but we are incorporating market knowledge into our estimated costs for these projects. So we are seeing slight increases, but we have not come to a point where we've had to delay delivery of a project yet.
Well, that's good news. Thank you.
That might change. I mean, when we put these things out for bid, we look at them, and if they are, we kind of have a QA/QC process. One, we get an engineering estimate, number one, and then secondly, for the majority of our projects, then secondly, we have internal expertise that may adjust that expected price up or down based on their market knowledge. And we compare it to other bids we're receiving that gives us that market knowledge.
All right, thanks.
So on these bid prices, is there a contingency built in?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any objections to this moving forward? Seeing none, go ahead.
Item 3, approval of an amendment to an intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Department of Transportation for the Clackamas County Regional Freight Intelligent Transportation System, allowing the county to access additional federal funds to address a budget shortfall in the project. The amendment value is $395,809.95. The total agreement value is now $2,512,493. Funding is through federal funds and the county road fund. No county general funds are involved.
This speaks somewhat to the question you just asked, Commissioner Scholl. We are seeing escalation in some of our prices in some of our projects. We have to make decisions on whether or not to curtail those projects and shrink them or try to get additional funding. This is getting additional funding. We were able to secure additional revenue from the federal government with a match of $40,000 of road fund, but felt that expenditure was reasonable and to provide the project as we had promoted within the original agreement. So happy to answer any questions you might have.
What's the probability of being awarded this grant?
Guaranteed.
Okay, I like that.
Good.
Yeah, any objections to this going forward? Seeing none.
Okay, thank you. Dan, next, Business and Community Services. Item 1, approval of a federal subrecipient grant agreement with the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife for the Boones Ferry Boat Ramp Dock Replacement Project. Grant value is $151,875. Funding is through the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. No county general funds are involved. Sarah Ekman is the Interim Director of Business and Community Services. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning. This project will replace 6 boarding docks at the County Parks Boones Ferry Boat Ramp. The 25-year-old wooden docks have deteriorated significantly, as you can imagine, and need to be replaced. So we'll be hiring a contractor to dispose of the old wooden docks and install new aluminum dock sections consistent with Oregon State Marine Board design standards.
Any questions? Any objections to moving forward? Seeing none.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. So all of these items will be on this Thursday's consent agenda, with the exception of County Council item on fees, which will be a discussion item on this Thursday's business meeting agenda. Thank you. Moving on to the other items today. Next, Community Development Action Plan Review. Mark Soroy from Community Development, Health, Housing, Human Services will present. Rod Cook is out of the office today, which is why you haven't seen him. All of his names on these items. Mark, there's a memo in your packet. Go ahead, Mark.
Good morning, Commissioners. Mark Soroy here with the Community Development Division. So I'm here today to present the 5-year plans. These are HUD funds. There's 3 grants that come from HUD, the Community Development Block Grant, the Home Grant, and the Emergency Solutions Grant. So HUD requires that we submit a 5-year plan starting this year. The first year of that plan is the Annual Action Plan. So that's also included in this packet. And in that annual action plan are the 3 grant applications for the year: the CDBG grant, the Home Grant, and the ESG grant. So I'm just presenting that to you. I've presented it to you before. Normally, HUD announces these amounts earlier in the year, and we have our public hearing in April, and then I've submitted it by this time, but this year was a little late. So
Because of HUD.
Because of HUD, they announced it late. So in your packet that most of you in the past have been really interested in is these funding recommendations. Now, I have 3 years of funding recommendations because we collected those applications in December of 2021 for CDBG projects only. And we spread it out over 3 years because HUD requires us to spend these projects down. So if any project gets slowed down, we look to other years to see what else we can fund. So that's why we have 3 years of funding recommendation. Moving into the future, I believe we're going to restructure ourselves a little bit, and we may have an annual set of applications, but for this process, we have 3 years of funding recommendations. So I'm here to answer any questions on the projects listed on the 3 years of funding recommendations or any.
I have a question. So are these projects set in stone? For instance, if an emergency arises that's not listed on here, can that be funded and maybe one of these taken off?
So HUD generally requires that if we start a new project, we have a 30-day post. So we could not recommend these to be funded, and we could say, yeah, we're going to cancel this. And actually, it happens in the past. These funding recommendations for this year include $500,000 of prior year funds because other projects have been canceled. You may recall we had a project a few years ago in Oregon City for a homeless services center with Love Inc. We approached that nonprofit and talked to the landowner, and they decided they didn't want to commit to 10 or 20 years that we required of the grant. So they gave up the grant.
Mhm.
So that money went back into the pot.
I see. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, well, thanks, Mark. I'm quite aware that the CDBG is a low-income requirement to meet, census tracts areas in which there's a low-income need. Are all the funds in that same category, if you will, requirement?
Yes. So the CDBG funds are meant to help low-income communities or low-income individuals. So you'll see many of the projects we fund are kind of ADA ramps because people with disabilities are considered low-income. Or in the past, we've funded a lot of senior centers because seniors are considered to be low-income. So now the home funds that are meant to build affordable housing, and we've also recommended tenant-based rental assistance. Those are also income qualifying. And the ESG funds, the Emergency Solutions Grant funds, those are meant for homeless services. But in our recommendations, we're using those funds or recommending those funds to support our homeless management information system, which is our data collection system for the whole county so that we can report to HUD.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, thank you. So really appreciate your memo that's here, or Rod's memo, but I'm curious, how do we see that list of projects? Where would I find that at?
It's not in your current packet or in the June 23rd packet, perhaps.
Okay.
It's not in this particular packet. I'm looking
Online.
for a link as well, Commissioner Fisher.
So it's beyond the June 23rd business meeting packet?
So, Commissioners, it was not in the memo I put in my issues list. We had a little misunderstanding here, Mark, and with Rod. So you need to come back on June 21st to issues with your consent agenda so the board can see the full packet with the intent it will go on that Thursday's business meeting agenda. This is just to tee you up for that conversation.
Yeah.
All right.
That's good.
Okay, so, and if you could send that out to commissioners ahead of time so we can have questions prepared if anybody has any. Okay, I think that's all on this particular
Yeah,
topic.
just you have the staff reports, right? Send it out now to the board, and you still have to come back to issues on June 21st, please.
Will do, Gary. I've also gotten another request to kind of separate my request into three different reports. Is that still current, or want to keep it?
I asked for that, yes, you need to do that.
We'll do that as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Move on. Thank you, Mark. Next, request for a policy session, Damascus Mobility Plan. There was a memo in your packet. Dan Johnson will present.
Let's make sure our terminology is right. Here in your schedule with policy sessions, I'm not here necessarily to request one. I'm here to inquire if the board would like one. The Clackamas County essentially is responsible for developing a transportation system plan throughout the unincorporated areas of Clackamas County. That plan then aligns with plans that are adopted in the individual cities. That system works great. What the system never contemplates really is if a city were to disincorporate. So now essentially what we have is a donut. We have a hole in our transportation system plan, okay? This effort is to go out, look at that area that was the former area of Damascus, and develop a transportation system plan, not to operationalize the future urban development that may be seen there, but basically what rural improvements consistent with the remainder of the county are needed in that area, okay? That work is underway. We have a hearing scheduled with the Planning Commission. I believe it's in August per the packet of information we submitted to you. I will be frank with the board. We've done presentations at the CPO level out there. There has not been a lot of consternation about it. There has been a little bit of confusion because you have the Reincorporate Damascus folks out there talking about bigger roads and things like that. We went there the same day as those folks, basically to clarify to the CPO and the public. It was a very well-attended meeting. There were like a couple hundred people there, basically saying, hey, this is the scope of our work. This is all that we are doing. We didn't hear any community issues that I'm aware of at that meeting. In fact, we heard support for going forward with those projects. So I am here to inquire if the board would like a policy session on it. We don't have to do a policy session, but we can always do briefings with the board prior to it coming forward for a board hearing. But I am here to do the board's bidding. So if you'd like a policy session, we can schedule one up.
Let's discuss this, Commissioners. Commissioner Fisher?
So it seems to me that it's beyond transportation mobility, because there are, and Commissioner Savas mentioned it, I don't remember how long ago, maybe a few weeks ago, that there's talk about swapping parts of the urban growth, areas within the urban growth boundary, swapping some Tigard with some Damascus. So if that's all happening, how would that affect the planning that we would do for that, what is now a donut? I mean, isn't this all interrelated, and don't we need to take a bigger view?
It isn't, because the work that we are doing is developing a rural transportation system. It's not dealing with those long-term development of an urban transportation system. So essentially, we're looking at comparable rural areas to the area that was once Damascus. If you were advancing discussions around adopting a comprehensive plan for Damascus, that is when you would have to increase that level of analysis for your transportation system plan to show more improved roadways to support those higher densities. We are not undergoing that exercise. We're simply filling the rural donut hole that we have right now. So you'll see shoulder projects, you'll see some mobility projects, some maybe turn lane additions, things like that. It does not get into the fact that at some point this is going to be a future urbanized area and that it is going to need additional infrastructure to support that. It does not go that far.
Okay, because Damascus disincorporated, we are not going to increase capacity or housing density or development within that area, because that would mean Clackamas County would be the concept planning and have to do all of that, and that's not something that we should do.
We have not gotten any direction from the board or any interest from the board in advancing that at this point in time. There needs to be a discussion at some point, and we are meeting with Commissioner Scholl here, I believe today or tomorrow, to update him, because that dialogue around that UGB and criteria about changing that is coming up at MPAC, and the intent is that Commissioner Scholl, Commissioner Savas has been a part of those dialogues as well, that we share that information with them and get them up to speed, and I'm assuming they will be convening a dialogue with the board here as a whole through their commissioner communications. That's the intent.
Okay, well, you probably, since I'm alternate on MPAC, you probably have to include me on that as well.
And if you have time today, I'm not sure, but if you could look, we can double up the meeting, that's fine, whatever works best, or we'll schedule some separate time with you.
Thanks.
Yep.
There are conversations and some actions on some statewide group regarding this issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking the next session of the legislature is going to review the urban growth boundaries around the cities. My understanding is all the cities are screaming because they're prohibited from expanding for job growth. And Intel is an example that left Oregon for Ohio because of the non-availability of land. That is just one issue. And you may know that a microchip statewide group has been started to look at this with the governor, Senator Ron Wyden, and representatives from the two counties, and Clackamas County was omitted from that until Our wonderful staff, on my request, asked Ron, hey, we need somebody, so our Clackamas Community College president, Tim Cook, was appointed to that as a workforce development piece. And Commissioners, this is a really big deal, and of course, we'll have further discussions on this. Commissioner Savas, you're up.
Yeah, well, Dan, I think you're here. I guess if I could, voice my thoughts, I think, the question, should we have a policy session, I would say, I would ask for one, and I would say, I'll tell you why. And I don't want to get a long-winded thing, but I'll just give you an example. We had at our last C4 meeting earlier in the month, TriMet had an opportunity to present to us, and pre-COVID, we had challenges about getting service in Clackamas County, period, because of their available funds where we really needed it, where growth is happening, where housing densities are increasing and parking restrictions are being lifted in the anticipation that transit will come, and it's not come. The monies, the resources aren't coming. And now post-COVID, they're having significant challenges and financial challenges as well, which even prolongs the pain, if you will. But what came up in this meeting that's relevant to this is that someone mentioned that Damascus does not have transit service, and inside here you've got a mobility issue, or what's it called? The Damascus Mobility Plan, and it speaks about transportation improvements and transit, active transportation, and so forth. So I asked the question of TriMet that evening, colleagues. So where is the line, the TriMet boundary, right? Because we know that Boring pulled out, right? We know that Damascus was formed in the early 2000s. Not sure where that is. Where is Happy Valley as the annex in? So I think it's relevant if we're going to be planning for the future, because you mentioned the donut hole that came up, but that's not the same donut hole as the transit donut hole. That's just the donut hole for this area of Damascus, as I understand it, correct? So I think we have some people out there that are asking those questions, by the way, that I've been hit with. When do I get transit service? How do I get lift service? You're not in the district. We don't serve it as Clackamas County. So I think it's actually might be a healthy discussion. At least it would educate us a little bit more about what's there, what's not there, and what the propensity for service is in the future or not.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. It says in your memo that the Oregon Revised Statutes requires local governments to update the plan. We're looking at Chapter 5 of the TSP, correct? When was the last time that any of this was updated?
Well, it's been a while. I think it was
It's been a long time,
2013.
okay.
And we actually are kicking off a larger effort in the upcoming year to look at the entirety of our TSP system as a whole. It's
So,
separate from this.
Your request is just for Chapter 5. I understand that, but.
Correct.
So, okay, Commissioner Schrader.
Yeah, I have a question about, Happy Valley has been annexing quite a bit of land. And I'm just trying to get straight in my own head. If there is a land swap where that is no longer urban reserve, does Happy Valley still have an opportunity to continue to annex in that direction, in that area? Because if so, wouldn't the transportation piece become part of their purview, probably coordinating with the county?
Wow, I haven't been a planner for a long time.
Well, that's, if you can't, if you
Yeah,
don't
we can
know,
bring it
you
back
get
as a part of the presentation. That nuance, that gets to the nuance that Commissioner Fisher was talking about how that transportation system matures as it moves from the rural into the urban, and they are different. And so again, this discussion is simply about filling the hole with an analysis to a rural level, not the urban level. That is a lot of the work that Happy Valley is doing right now. So for example, they've got that 172nd corridor down to like Carver. They're looking at all that area. And if they propose any changes in there that increase densities, that change the zoning of the property, they've got to do comparable improvements to their infrastructure system to support it. And that's how that exercise takes place.
Okay, so they can still
Yes. Yep.
march to the east, but it does become under their purview in terms of annexation.
Yeah.
That was-
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good. I don't see any objections to this moving forward for a policy session. I think it's probably needed. We'll have very good discussions on that.
Okay. We'll work with the county administration and get that scheduled.
Thank you very much, Commissioners.
Thank you. Next, review of your business meeting agenda for this Thursday, June 16th, 2022, 10 a.m. You will have 2 board discussion items, one on fees and fines, as you discussed today. Second is the appointment of a county assessor as of July 1st, and then you'll have all the consent agenda items you approved today. If you have any questions on any item, please let me know prior to Thursday. Next, Performance Clackamas Housing Implementation Team Update. As you know, Commissioners, we're doing a monthly update with you on one of your 10 board priorities, your strategic plan results. Today is the Housing Implementation Team, which is reviewing your board goal of by 2025, 1,500 affordable housing units will be developed. We have Adam Brown from Health, Housing, Human Services and Devin Ellen from the Housing Authority of Clackamas County to give you a brief update on their accomplishments on this result. There was a memo in your packet. Please go ahead, Adam and Devin.
Good morning once again. So I'm here with Devin on behalf of the Housing Implementation Team to share a brief update. As you know, this team has been overseeing the affordable housing development that will achieve the board's goal of developing 1,500 affordable housing units across the county, stratified across various area meeting income ranges by 2025. This work has been guided by the county's local implementation strategy for Metro Affordable Housing Bond Funds, pursuing changes to the county's zoning and development ordinances, and leveraging public and private partnerships. Key strategies to the team's work include leveraging those Metro Affordable Housing Bond Funds to spur development, encouraging innovation and collaboration among stakeholders, including nonprofit agencies and private market developers. It's included leveraging housing authority resources like federal voucher programs, along with the county's supportive housing services funding, removing code barriers, and considering changes to relevant ordinances to allow for increased housing density. And I'm going to pass it off to Devin to talk more about the specifics.
Welcome, Devin.
Thank you. So I'm excited to share our progress toward the board's Performance Clackamas goal of developing 1,500 affordable units by 2025. If you turn to the table on page 4 in your packet, you can see that we currently have 336 units completed, and between the Tukwila Springs and Fuller Station projects, we will have another 147 units opening in July and August. So by the end of 2022, we will have 483 units in operation. And then we have Malala Apartments consisting of 60 units, which will be starting construction in July, and 100 more units at Merrillhurst Commons, which will be starting construction in August. So by the end of this year, we'll have 474 units under construction and 483 units completed, bringing us to 957 units of affordable housing, complete or under construction. And then, in fact, by the end of 2022, we will exceed our 2025 unit production goal for 60% AMI units by nearly 120%. And this does not include the 550 units we have in pre-development. So I'm hopeful that we can nearly double our production goals by 2025. So the passing of the Affordable Housing Bond Measure has proven to be a considerable resource in helping us meet and exceed those goals. But it's also important to note that the 336 units we've completed thus far were built without those housing bond funds. We developed these units using other important and impactful tools available to us without Metro intervening. These include nonprofit and private partnerships, property tax reductions or exemptions, project-based rental assistance and repositioning proceeds from the Housing Authority, and density bonuses, SDC waivers, and parking reductions from the jurisdictions. These are really important tools that we can leverage in coordination with housing bond and supportive housing funds to attract the tax credit equity and private investment needed to build even more units. The data shows that building affordable housing pays off in ways that touch nearly every department and jurisdiction within the county. These include reduced burdens on social services, police, fire, and emergency response, to name just a few. And in fact, a recently released study shows that despite what many believe, in most cases, there is a positive impact on property values after affordable housing is added to a neighborhood. And I will circulate that study that just came out. Most people need a safe and sanitary place to call home as a baseline for getting back on their feet, and I'm really proud of the progress we've made thus far and excited to see how far we can go.
Well, I think this progress is commendable. You said you were double the goals for housing. Which goal is that?
So that's the 800 0 to 60% AMI units.
Okay, and the goal was 800?
Yeah.
And you're going to say it's going to be?
I think we can bring it up to 16.
That is remarkable.
That's great.
And commendable as well.
Thank you.
Commissioner Schrader.
Yeah, thank you guys for all the work you do. This is really commendable. We're really increasing our capacity. I was going to ask you the same thing I asked the folks who are the service delivery piece of this. Even though this is a sticks and bricks part of the Metro Bond, it's very important for the region to know specifically the capacity we're building. And we have not yet, in my mind, been really mentioned at all in the Here Together newsletter. And I think we need to let them know what we're up to and what we're doing, because I'm still smarting a little bit from kind of, the implications that we weren't doing our part a little bit. And I think we need to be very, very deliberate in making sure that they are aware that as a regional partner, we are doing our bit in Clackamas County, and also we're doing it in rural areas as well. And oftentimes, some of our urban neighbors don't have the same kind of populations or demographics to deal with. So if we can get that information out to them and see if we can get some positive positive press, quite frankly, I would really appreciate that. So
I'll make sure to do that.
Hopefully PGA is listening.
Yep.
Gary?
Well, yeah, that.
Yes.
Thank you very much. This is a wonderful report. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Gary, what's next?
Thank you to our team. They are hitting it out of the park on this goal for you, Commissioners. Outstanding work.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Next, Commissioner Schrader wanted to discuss apprenticeship programs, and there was an attachment in your packet.
Well, colleagues, I'm going to be very brief. I know I have to be out of here by 11:30. What I gave you was just kind of a setting the table document. This is about a workforce training and hiring program specifications. I was going to ask you to read through it, and maybe we have a broader issues discussion about it. I will tell you that I have more information with me that has not been included in your packet, including the workforce training and hiring program. There is a resolution. Again, we'd have to discuss if that's something that we want to do or would like to do. And then another piece of continued information I would like to give you is the constructing diverse workforce, examining union and non-union construction apprenticeship programs and their outcomes for women and workers of color. So this is just kind of informational at this point. I would like to discuss it. We are, quite frankly, Gary, maybe you can help me with this. We are also doing C2P2. So we'd have to decide if this is an additional layer we want to talk about. I am worried that it does add significant conditions, I think, that for contracting that our Department of Transportation and Development would have to handle, and so we need to also get their feedback on this. So I guess, Chair, I'm asking you, where do you want to go? Is this a work session? Again, I'll get you the rest of this information, and can we revisit it under issues, or is it something that we want to talk about in terms of what we're doing with the C2P2 workforce and the rest of what we're up to?
Gary Schmidt.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you, Commissioners and Commissioner Schrader. So you did bring this before the board, Commissioner Schrader, last fall, and the board said not to go forward at this time because you were focusing on C2P2, the Career Construction to Careers Pathways Project. This work, while incredibly important and valuable, it does have a significant impact. There's a cost to this, as well as making it part of our system internally will have impacts. So I suggest, and now's your discussion, if you really want us to consider this, we do have an internal staff committee that's reviewing and implementing the C2P2 work. We can ask them to review it, give you recommendations, and come forward. But again, you've already had this conversation, so I don't want to duplicate work that's already been done.
I have some questions, but two commissioners are in the queue. Thank you, Gary. Commissioner Fisher and then Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, so Commissioner Schroeder, I'm a little bit confused. What we have in our packet, workforce training and hiring program specifications, what is this?
Well, essentially what it is something that we would enter into and commit to as a county, that as my understanding, that is we contract out for building, that we also put this framework around it that we will actually track and require that a certain number of apprentices are in a program.
And who developed this?
Well, this is from our union folk, and I will be honest, for full disclosure, I'm doing this as a courtesy for Ken Humbertston, who has talked to me numerous times to get more information to me about this issue, and I told him that I would bring it forward to the commission again. And so my sense is that the concern of having additional costs is real at this point, and I think the fundamental question is whether or not our C2P2 program will actually give us the same outcome, but not necessarily put us under the umbrella of a more formal contract. Is that a good way to characterize it, Gary?
Yes.
Okay.
So can I follow up?
Go ahead. You don't need your button on. for that.
Okay, because I wasn't sure what this was, but my understanding was that the C2P2 would be doing apprenticeships and looking to create that framework. And then I thought that was in place since we had passed it, and then I had a question, and I went to our staff, and so I was really surprised that we weren't farther along.
Well, we'll get
Because the trades, I mean, providing those jobs are so important for folks, and having pathways for apprenticeship is the way into those good-paying
Right.
jobs that really help support our workforce and our economy. So I'm not sure how this interplays with C2P2, but I am absolutely, completely in favor of moving along the apprenticeship component that the trades have been recommending. I had the wonderful opportunity of, when the building trades had their conference in Sun River, I was able to go and really did a deep dive into what would be called a project labor agreement or community benefit agreement, of which we had, before we were briefed as a commission on that. I mean, I think it's important that we use public dollars for outcomes that we want to see, and if we support as a commission using our contracting efforts to promote apprenticeship, I think it's money well spent. I had just on the side, farmer's market here, Oregon City, was at the Holly Farms, and there's a young man who's selling. He's going to be graduating from Oregon City High School, and he wants to be an electrician. And I was just able to say, well, I've got the connections for you to get you started, and was able to make that connections with IBEW. And what a wonderful thing to have that opportunity. So I would really like to see us do all that we can in this, and I don't want to see us.
You want to answer that, Commissioner Schroeder?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Fisher. As everyone knows, I have two sons in the trades, and I connected my foster son in the same way you connected this young man to the plumbers and steam fitters, because I knew it would be good for him. And so my oldest son and my foster son are both in the trades right now, and they're making bank. They're doing really, really well. So I'm a huge supporter of the trades. I think the question is fundamentally, if we commit to C2P2, are we really doing the same thing? And I would say yes. My worry is this, that if we add another layer of contractual obligations, it would slow projects down, and I'll be honest with you, and probably increase costs. So what we have to do is fundamentally commit to it, but I'm concerned that we would give DTD a whole nother layer of paperwork to go through, whereas I think we can implement it All right, and I'm going to ask Gary, I know that Tracy's back now, right? And she is working on the C2P2 project. So can we find out where we are with that and where we are with implementing it? I think this is a great idea, and I'm going to distribute all the information to everyone if you want to take a look at it. But I think C2P2 was what we committed to, and it's the route that we should go, so.
Just as a follow-up, I'm confused as to what the difference is, because my understanding is C2P2 is about incorporating an apprenticeship.
Yes.
So if there's something different.
But yes, of course, because it is different.
Okay, that's, I don't
I know you don't, so that's why I brought additional materials for you to read and look at today, because I didn't think that we would get through it. So in any case, I will make sure all of this gets to you, but I think that C2P2 is actually moving ahead the way we want it to move ahead.
Okay.
My understanding of the difference is this, is that this would be another contractual piece, paperwork that we would have to do. Can we move ahead with C2P2 without that? I don't see why not.
Okay, we have other commissioners with comments. Commissioner Savas, you're up.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind having a greater discussion at the right time about this. So my, how we thread the needle or whatnot, and the concerns about other departments, like you mentioned DTD, if the threshold is $100,000 or more, 100,000 or more are registered, $100,000 or more are registered as training agents, and then there's a $200,000 number in here as well. But my point is this, is that I'm trying to make, is that my understanding was the C2P2 interest was on the larger scale, multi-million-dollar projects with public funds that are funded publicly, right? And we just had a presentation about the housing. Those are public funds. Those are a lot of opportunity for many of the trades. So I don't know if we're leveraging the C2P2 opportunities on those or not. But we do have, if we just put aside the trade organizations for a moment and think about what we're hearing from a lot of our contractors, is they are starving for help, trying to hire people. They're doing everything they can to retain them because there's a shortage of workers out there to do the work. There's so much public money out there with the federal funds that have been distributed for all these major infrastructure grants. We need the people, and by making people successful, usually younger people that enter the trades, it certainly reduces the need for more affordable housing and more in the workforce, so people can be successful, buy their own home, and live the American dream. So it's kind of a win-win when we talk about our businesses and everyone else. It's huge. So but I'm just kind of concerned maybe that the point that was raised about DTD, maybe the threshold needs to be maybe a little bit higher to reduce the burden, but I don't know. I'm not an expert, but maybe that's a discussion we have.
I think that's part of the issue, yeah. Thank you.
Of course, I love the trades.
I do
Two
too.
family members,
Yeah.
two of the younger family members are electricians. I have, my lifelong friends, children who now have gone into the trades as well. And the trades, I think, are just do some of the best job training and recruitment around. You walk into a high school and you look at the boards in the high school, college, or trades, and you can actually enroll yourself in a trade and you're paid immediately, and you don't come out with a college debt. And I think the trades do a tremendous amount of recruitment for college kids too. I know one of my friends' sons, who was a graduate from college, went out and worked and wasn't making enough. He went back into the trades with a college degree, and he's loving it, and he's doing really well in a small company. And Commissioner Savas is right. There is a labor shortage. Whether creating another apprentice program in Clackamas County, when we already have this C2P2, I think needs to be looked at. Gary, when was the last time we reviewed C2P2? Did we do that recently?
It was last fall, so it's been 4
Okay,
or 5 months.
and maybe, why don't we do this? Why don't we take a look at those documents from the last policy session? See if there was any decision, what the discussion was at moving forward. We email those to all of my commissioners. If this is another layer of redundancy more work for staff, and it costs more money, I think that is a serious detriment to whatever this apprentice program is going through. And I think we have to be very, very mindful of our budgets moving forward. And where would this money come from to implement this additional apprentice program? Where would that
So
come
to
from?
implement it, there's no money for it. We just figured out how to do it internally. The apprentice would be borne by the contractors who are hiring to do the work, but then we're having bidding issues right now because we're struggling to get bidders on contracts, so.
Well, that's
there's a
just
whole
it. So in the
infrastructure here.
bids, then they would have to supply a position for that, so the bids would increase, correct?
Correct, yes. The cost of the
Okay,
project
that's
would
an issue.
increase.
And then we're hiring these contractors to perform work for Clackamas County, and then our price to build goes up, and commissioners, we already know that prices for any construction is just sky high right now. So let's review that, let's send that out, and we can have, and if this is just a burning issue, we'll bring it back for discussion. Is that okay, commissioners?
I think it's a great idea.
Okay, let's review the past materials that we did on this, and then let's see moving forward.
Yeah, so I'm interested in having a deeper discussion, as Commissioner Savas suggested, simply because there was a $10 million, I'm not sure if I'm going to have my numbers right, a West project, $10 million with the pipe that's going underneath the new Abernathy that's coming up, and it's a big project. So my thought would have been that C2P2 would have been incorporated into that, and I learned that we are not at that place with our implementation. So I think a briefing about what does C2P2 do, where are we at with it, is it adequate, what would be the impacts of moving it faster or,
Right.
I mean, we just don't know. And I have been operating under some assumptions that were not correct. I think all of us need to be briefed on where we are with that.
Okay, Commissioner Schrader.
Yeah, I just want to comment with Water and Environment Services. Remember, they are another entity that does, like DTD, that does those sizes of contracts. And that would probably have to be run through their, probably we need to give it to their committee that works together with one another. I'm a liaison there. And I should probably bring a report of C2P2 to the West Committee as well. So.
Okay, Gary, let's find that other policy session materials and send them out to the board. If we've already discussed this last fall, I'm not sure what we're going to gain unless somebody out there wants another layer of a program that I'm very hesitant to move forward on. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, just to be remiss if I didn't at least say that one big thing about the trade organizations is their training programs are just stellar.
They
offer
are.
opportunities. They don't burden these folks with debt, school debt, and it puts them to work right away. So it's impressive, and you can't beat that.
I know,
You
I
just
would
can't.
agree 100%, and you said that very well. We're going to wrap this up, commissioners. We're going to move forward. Please be brief, Commissioner Fisher.
Oh, no, I mean, I appreciate having the previous materials. I'm just curious how we will get updated on what has transpired over the last year.
We'll discuss it, and I need to read the materials. In order to have an update, I need an understanding to move forward on this particular issue. That's how, and then bring it forward when we get the materials. Let's have an understanding, commissioners, of what programs are out there and what the implications of doing another layer is going forward. We need to understand that. Okay, Gary, what's up next?
All right, finally, today is Commissioner Communications.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Oh, wait, she can't leave yet. Can I just go first?
Go ahead.
Because Commissioner Schrader, we have NACO. I was told we have to decide who will be voting on behalf of Clackamas County for NACO president officers. And I would suggest that since we'll both be there and you have been our voting delegate for many years, I will be there with you, but I'm happy for you to do the voting, but we need to all agree. Is that okay with everyone? I didn't want you to leave before.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Is that good?
And we will all agree with, basically, actually, I know the incoming president very well. I don't, so this will be for the second.
Yep.
Race that
Are we good with delegating that duty to Martha, everyone?
Yeah, is there,
So moved.
yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
Second,
We can just do a thumbs up.
Unanimous consent.
Unanimous.
Martha, you're the
Thank you,
designee.
Martha. You're dismissed.
Okay, all right. Okay, so Commissioner Fisher, do you have any comments under
No, I think
Commissioner
that was
Cre-
my big
So you blew
duty.
your
Oh,
wad.
except maybe a little bit, we will be doing the strategic plan for ALC, which I mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
I am leaving this afternoon. This is for legislation. If there is anything, I know we've talked a lot in our general discussions about where our priorities are. If there's anything that anybody really wants me to address, I'm happy to do so. So
Would you
just let me
please
know.
talk to staff and,
Yep, been in touch, but
Good.
for our commissioners, just throwing that out there.
okay, thank you very
Mental
much.
health, drug, alcohol treatment centers.
Absolutely. I think
That's the big
huge.
one. That's the big one.
I think, if you could do that,
Mhm.
we'd all be happy.
Okay.
Yeah. Commissioner Savas, do you have comments?
For my portion?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just want to say getting a lot of phone calls and people reaching out on the short-term rental thing that we're going to have next week, next Thursday. I am suggesting, and maybe I bring it up next week, next Tuesday, but I'm hoping maybe we can put together, I really think there's some low-hanging fruit for a very mild plan that does not burden the general fund, that is up in between the great huge package versus doing nothing. And you ought to hear the stories. When you hear the stories, and which we did when we were on the board years ago, when these people came, about what it's like to live next to a short-term rental that are not behaving, that are not on the best. Those impacts in the quality of life are huge. And I expect a number of people to show up, and I know that they're reaching out right now in a constructive way, ideally, to try to get us to at least capture all that work that we did in some kind of meaningful way. So I have a proposal. I talked to Gary about it. I talked to staff about it. And I think maybe if we got a little bit of head nods for just an option in there for discussion, it would make a huge amount of benefit for us to get a lot of work done.
Just bring the option forward. Just write it up and bring it forward.
Okay.
My big objection to the short-term rentals was the $800 fee.
I agree, totally.
I mean, that is just, look, these people are not rolling. Used to own a facility, and I never paid an $800 fee in my life. I paid the transit tax every month. And so that's just really hard, Paul. But why don't you just
Yeah,
bring it forward?
it would help if maybe Mr. Madcore knew that we were all interested in the option. I think that would help that along a little bit.
Just bring the option forward. I think it's good for discussion.
Right.
Okay, Commissioner Scholl?
Yes, like you mentioned, Commissioner Smith, today's Flag Day. It's important to take a moment to think about what that flag means, the sacrifice of countless men and women who built this nation. Also today is the birthday of the United States Army, founded on this day in 1775, 1 month after the skirmish at Lexington Green. I'd like to thank everybody who served in the United States Army. Also, yesterday, Commissioner Schrader and I were at Tukwila Springs. This came out very nice. My compliments to Walsh Construction. I do have some concerns about the cost of administrative services, $2.6 million over 5 years. That pencils out to about $10,000 a year per resident. So it's something that we need to look at. Also, I'd like to thank the Clackamas County H3S, the Housing Implementation Team, for their good work in achieving Performance Clackamas goals. And I was happy to hear them speak about the importance of stimulating private market developers, because we do need to be able to create homes so that our young people can have the American dream of home ownership.
Absolutely.
And at an affordable price. So I do appreciate that very much. I'd like to remind anybody out there listening that we're still looking for projects for safety off the street. And I agree with the comments made here earlier about the short-term rental. I don't want to see a greater administrative burden on the county and a cost to the people to administer this, but I have heard also some stories that require us to get involved and do something to regulate this.
Okay.
Thank you.
The only comment that I'm going to make, and we're going to adjourn, is have you folks considered we put we implement the short-term rental with the goal of satisfying the people who are against loud parties and all these complaints, but yet it still continues. So it goes to behavior. Government, since the beginning of time, have tried to regulate people's behavior by implementing costly programs. And my question is going to be, how is this going to alleviate the bad actors' behavior? So commissioners, be prepared to answer that when we review this. Thank you all for your wonderful discussions. I appreciate it all today, and we are adjourned.